As the saying goes, a contract sometimes isn't worth the paper it's written on. Formula One history certainly proves that, with endless examples of drivers and teams who didn't stay together as long as their deals suggested they would. At the race, we've already covered some of those cases in our videos, including this look at Alain Prost being sacked by Ferrari and our rundown of drivers who didn't make the most of their big chance in F1. For this video, we've picked out a variety of examples. In some, the driver has decided to go elsewhere. In others, the team has had enough, and there's even an example where a big-name driver was paid a huge sum of money not to race. Of course, this isn't a comprehensive list of every instance of a driver not seeing out their deal, it's simply the ones that we reckon had the biggest shock value. So let us know in the comments below who you would have included. Sergio Perez had a contract with Racing Point for 2021, but as the season progressed, the double talk used by the team in saying its drivers had contracts, rather than confirming their places for the following season, made it clear something was up. That turned out to be the signing of Sebastian Vettel, whose contract Ferrari had decided not to renew. With Lance Stroll, son of team owner Lawrence Stroll, locked in, it was Perez who paid the price. But Perez was having a strong season, and when he claimed the first victory for the team under Stroll's ownership in the Sakhir Grand Prix, he was actually already without a drive for 2021. Perez was holding out for a Red Bull seat and landed on his feet by signing a deal to join one of F1's biggest teams, which he will stay with until at least the end of 2024. When Ayrton Senna signed his first Formula One deal with Toleman, it covered 1984 through to 1986. But at the end of his sensational rookie season in 1984, he moved to Lotus. While it was a controversial move that led to Senna being benched for the Italian Grand Prix, Senna was entirely within his rights. His deal contained a £100,000 buyout clause, over $250,000 in today's money, that Lotus triggered. However, the Toleman team was unhappy with the way this was handled, as Lotus announced Senna was joining for 1985 before formally activating that buyout clause. That's what led to him being suspended. Senna returned to see out the season, finishing third in his final race for Toleman at Estoril before heading off to Lotus. Nikita Mazepin was preparing for his second season in Formula One with Haas in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine during the first pre-season test in Barcelona. Although Mazepin saw out the test, it was clear that his future with the team was in jeopardy when Haas removed the branding of title sponsor Uralkali, owned by Mazepin's Russian oligarch father Dmitry, during the Barcelona test. By the time F1 reconvened for the second test, Mazepin and Uralkali had gone for good, with Haas terminating both the sponsorship deal and the driver contract. While Mazepin complained about the lack of communication from the team over the decision and what he called cancel culture, Haas re-signed Kevin Magnussen, who promptly bagged 5th place in the season-opening Bahrain Grand Prix. Andrea de Cesaris escaped one of the most spectacular F1 crashes of the 1980s in the 1985 Austrian Grand Prix, when his Ligier was pitched into a series of rolls after going off at the Österreichring. But he couldn't escape the wrath of team boss Guy Ligier, who decided he could no longer afford the accident damage bills racked up by de Cesaris. The crash proved to be the tipping point, and Ligier decided that weekend to sack de Cesaris. De Cesaris had a stay of execution because the Dutch Grand Prix followed a weekend later, keeping out of trouble before retiring with a turbo failure, but that was it. De Cesaris felt his sacking was unfair and claimed that it was his first mistake of the season. That was perhaps a stretch, but he also pointed to financial considerations. De Cesaris might have had a point, especially given he was backed by Marlboro, with a team supported by Titan, which also backed his replacement, Philipp Streff. When Ralf Schumacher got his big break in Formula One with Jordan in 1997, it was the first season of a 3-year deal. He made a promising start, finishing on the podium in his third F1 outing in Argentina, albeit after a collision with teammate Giancarlo Fisichella that cost Jordan a shot at victory. But the team's bad start to 1998, failing to score a point in the first 8 races, meant Schumacher was looking for pastures new. He had already had contact with Williams after ending the Jordan points drought with 6th place at Silverstone, but he needed a little help from brother Michael to make the move. Ralf was unhappy with team orders being issued by Eddie Jordan at Spa that meant he had to hold station behind teammate Damon Hill to ensure the team closed out its first victory with a 1-2. But Michael was equally unhappy and, after paying Eddie Jordan a visit after the race to express his dissatisfaction, he played an active role in helping Ralf find a way out. Subsequently, Ralf's management issued a press release stating he would be leaving the team and a High Court hearing was scheduled. But this didn't take place, with a release clause in Ralf's contract, subsequently claimed by Eddie Jordan to be worth $2 million, paid by Michael to facilitate his move to Williams. Alain Prost's sacking by Ferrari in 1991 is one of the most famous examples of a contract not being seen out in F1 history, but the circumstances of his departure from Renault are, if anything, even more remarkable. Prost had been contracted to McLaren for 1981 when he made the switch to Renault, but he reversed the move when he returned to McLaren in 1984. Prost's relationship with Renault had become increasingly fractious, with both sides unhappy with comments made in the media and problems behind the scenes, making for an uneasy partnership of team and driver. By the time Prost had lost out on the 1983 World Championship, it was already clear he and Renault were going their separate ways. But it was very much to Prost and McLaren's advantage, given Renault actually ended up paying his salary for 1984, as Ron Dennis revealed a few years ago. Prost went on to win 3 World Championships for McLaren, while Renault's works team was closed down at the end of 1985. When Heinz-Harald Frentzen had a run at the World Championship in 1999 after joining Jordan, few would have foreseen this partnership coming to a sudden end 11 races into 2001. Having taken up an option in his contract for the following season, Frentzen was notified of his sacking by fax before his home Grand Prix in Germany. Jordan cited his disappointing performances as one of the reasons. Frentzen contested the reasoning, which led to legal action, with a settlement eventually being reached at the end of the following year. Jordan later admitted that while Frentzen's performances had been below par, he didn't want to sack him, but it was all part of securing Honda engines for 2002, which required signing Takuma Sato. Frentzen only missed 1 race before returning with Prost, and continued in F1 until the end of 2003. When Fernando Alonso joined Ferrari in 2010, it seemed a match made in heaven. And for a while it was, with Alonso coming close to winning the World Championship in both 2010 and, miraculously, in 2012. But by 2014, the relationship between team and driver was getting shaky thanks to its poor start to the V6 turbo hybrid era. Alonso was under contract until 2016 and initially was discussing the possibility of a new, longer deal that would potentially keep him at Ferrari until 2019. However, the relationship between Alonso and Ferrari, particularly with new team principal Marco Mattiacci, was deteriorating. Soon, the possible extended deal was off the table. With Ferrari chasing Sebastian Vettel and Alonso being courted by McLaren to join it for its hoped-for new golden era with Honda engines, the situation eventually came to a head. After all, Mattiacci wasn't happy to hear Ferrari's star driver was looking around, even while evaluating alternatives himself. Ferrari already had an agreement in principle with Vettel, but that was subject to certain performance criteria not being met by Red Bull. In a fractious showdown with Mattiacci, Alonso, who had been leaning towards sticking it out with Ferrari, agreed to walk away. Alonso made his ill-fated move to McLaren, while Vettel won 3 times in 2015 as Ferrari began its recovery from a dismal start to the hybrid era. Valtteri Bottas was looking forward to a 5th season with Williams in 2017 when world champion Nico Rosberg dropped the bombshell that he was retiring and left Mercedes without a driver. Bottas had built a good F1 reputation with his performances for Williams. That, combined with the fact Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff was involved with his management, made Bottas an obvious choice. The trouble is, Williams had Bottas under contract and wasn't going to give him up without compensation. In the end, a deal for in the vicinity of £10 million was agreed, a payment that was largely responsible for Williams' profit margin in 2016. Bottas went on to race for Mercedes for 5 seasons, while Felipe Massa came out of his very short-lived F1 retirement to replace him at Williams. Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari career started well, winning on his first start for the team in Australia 2007 and going on to win the World Championship. But with his performances dropping off in 2008 and 9, Ferrari's sights were set firmly on Fernando Alonso. Raikkonen had a deal in place for 2010 as a result of an option that was triggered thanks to meeting the performance criteria. But with Santander coming on board and Alonso marking time at Renault, the decision was made to pay Raikkonen not to race in 2010 to make room for Alonso. Raikkonen was paid in the vicinity of $25 million for 2010, although he would have been paid a lesser amount had his talks with McLaren resulted in him staying in F1. Instead, he turned his attention to rallying for 2 years before returning with Lotus in 2012. Well, those are our choices. Make sure you join the conversation in the comments below and let us know what you would have chosen, and which team or driver made the biggest mistake in not seeing out their deals.